options, but these are dealing with the transitional period. And I suppose what I'm trying to get at now, am I reading this right, that these are the clauses that allow the Airport Authority to come in and amend the existing provisions that are there? And I suppose my thinking was, if we remove them now, then they have no right to do that. So, well, then I'll be in favour of removing it and starting all over, because I think, and the residents think, that the existing provisions that were given in previous planning permissions were done for all of the right reasons, with the residents' interests at heart, and I'm not in favour of them changing, so I'd like these two clauses out. So if that's what these two sections are doing, which I thought they were, but I wasn't sure, well then, yeah, I would like them removed. Yeah,
okay,
sure.
Tara?
Well, I mean, this section provides clarity that existing, it's not specifically mention any specific planning permission, you know that, and nowhere does it indicate that. It's a general rule. It provides clarity that existing noise mitigation measures, whether in effect or not, will be considered noise mitigation measures for the purpose of this bill. That's pretty clear. Any of the past ones are considered for the purpose of this bill to be present one. This includes noise mitigation measures attached as conditions to existing planning consents. It's important that this provision is retained, mainly as it will ensure continuity with the planning and development aspects of this bill and provide clarity to the noise regulator and the planning authority. It will also allow the noise regulator to review any such measures in light of the balanced approach in line with Part 3 of this bill to ensure consistency in our approach to mitigating noise problems. This is one of the core purposes of the bill, and I'm on the Dáil record on this point. It's wholly appropriate that the regulator be empowered to take a full view of all existing and potential future noise mitigation measures at the airport. It's to be consistent. It's so that there's consistency throughout. It's not directed at anything in specific, at any specific measure.
Daly?
Yeah, now I've realised I was actually barking up the right tree. So well done me. But no, the point here is that, yeah, this is the key. I mean, the Minister is absolutely correct. There are no specific planning applications or existing permissions mentioned in this. But, like, you don't need to be, and that would be entirely inappropriate. But it would be also utterly la-la for us to sit here with the giant elephant or 747 in the room that is the open and declared intention of the DAA, supported in many quarters, that immediately this legislation is in place, that they will be relying on that in order to seek changes to the current restrictions on night noise movements and so on. And that's the issue which has caused huge concern for residents also. It relates to the other points I made earlier, that, you know, those conditions were put there after a very long battle. We discussed the last day, and I'm not going to sit here at the 11th hour because we're discussing it again, but the restrictions that were put in were there to protect human health. We've dealt with the issues about the impact on health. This is a real and nightmare reality for people out in. And, you know, if you take these provisions in the context with what the Minister and the discussion that was had last day around, where we were told that there's an urgency in this now, that this absolutely has to be done. We know what that means. This means the DAA have asked, should we have their correspondence talking about the uncertainty. Now, I don't accept that uncertainty. I'm in favour of development at Dublin Airport. I got my livelihood from the airlines. My constituents, most of them, my former workmates, all rely on the airport. We want a healthy and vibrant airport. But in the modern era, it has to be one which respects residents and goes in tandem with the same. And the night restrictions that are in place can be kept in place and work alongside a growing and developing airport. It just requires a different outcome for the airline operators. And yes, it's okay for the DAA to say, oh, Ryanair and Aer Lingus will decamp and they'll go to Honolulu or whatever. They won't. But what they are going to do is going to have to get some of their staff. The current restrictions are 65 night movements once the second runway is up and running, and a restriction in nighttime hours. Now, at the moment, night movements are about 99 movements per night. So yes, it's true on the surface that if this, once the second runway is operational, then at night there'll be about a 1/3 reduction in present night flights. But on the basis of a new runway and a lot more movement during the day, What that means is it's not less flights overall, it's less flights during that time. So what does that mean? And why is that provision there? It's there to suit the likes of Ryanair, utilise aircraft in a certain day in order to maximise their profits. That's what it's there for. They want the aircraft going out at 6 o'clock in the morning so that they can bring it back 2 and 3 times a day. It doesn't suit Mrs. Mott from wherever going to, Tenerife to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to drive up from Limerick to get that plane. It would actually suit her a bit better if it was after the hours of 7 o'clock, and it would suit the residents in that area also do. So how do you square the circle? It's very easy. The airlines have multiple staff employed to do aircraft scheduling, aircraft utilisation. So what they've got to do is match their fleet to the requirements. Yes, the 65 flights going during the night, absolutely. The businessmen going to London or businesswomen going to Berlin or whatever should be accommodated by an early flight. They have the information there to accommodate that, and those aircraft should be tuned. But somebody going to Tenerife or Lanzarote doesn't need to get up in the middle of the night, disturb the residents in St Margaret's and Portmarnock and Swords or wherever, and cause this. And we have to start thinking like this. It's unsustainable that the aviation industry can carry on unfettered. So in that sense, having a balanced development in tandem with the way in which the airport operates is the best way forward. So I think these conditions should be protected, and the best way and the only assurance we can give to it is to keep them there. At the moment, they cannot be changed. And this law is being brought in absolutely to bring in the noise regulation, but we know the DAA have said they're going to use it to change the conditions. So the reality is they can change the conditions without this law. And by us structuring this law, which is a good piece of legislation, in this way with these 2 clauses in it, we're giving them a platform then to change those 2 conditions. And if we do that and lose control of our democratic say in this part of the process, then we're abdicating our representation on behalf of residents, and I don't think it should be included, and I will definitely be pressing these 2.
I don't agree with the Deputy, and the reasons are, I think, pretty clear. This legislation was not introduced to suit the DAA. This legislation is part of a directive from Europe. That's why it was introduced. And it's introduced as a part of a pan-European directive to have a common standard about noise at the airports around Europe. It would be, I suppose, wrong to exclude them from applying under it. That would be absolutely incorrect as well. I'm no great lover of the DAA. I'm sure that the Deputy is aware of that. But I don't think it would be right to exclude them in any way. The legislation is introduced simply because of the 598 directive, and that's going to be consistent throughout Europe. If one of the consequences of it is that the DAA is going to appeal, as you say, those restrictions, and I'm sure you're right, let's be honest, I think it probably is, that's fine. Let it appeal. But to prejudge the result of that appeal is something I'm not going to do. And it would be absolutely wrong to do so, and expressing no confidence in the noise regulator in advance. I'm very happy for anybody who's had restrictions put on them in the past or noise mitigation measures that they should make an appeal to the noise regulator at an early date and let the cards fall wherever they do, and that's the intention here. This section provides clarity that existing noise mitigation measures, whether in effect or not, will be considered noise mitigation measures for the purpose of this bill. This includes noise mitigation measures attached as conditions to existing planning consent. It's important that this provision is retained, mainly as it will ensure continuity with the planning and development aspects of this bill and provide clarity to the noise regulator and the planning authority. It will also allow the noise regulator to review any such measures in light of the balanced approach in line with Part 3 of this bill to ensure consistency in our approach to mitigating noise problems. That is one of the core purposes of the bill, and I'm on the Dáil record on this point. It's wholly appropriate that the regulator will be empowered to take a full view of all existing and potential future noise mitigation measures at the airport. If the operating restrictions are reviewed, there will have to be a full noise assessment subject to the full 598 process, subject to appeal, etc. This is not in any way set up for any particular body. It is something which has come from Europe initially and not from us, for European consistency.
Deputy Daly.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the legislation is with regard to the transposing of the EU regulation, and that's why I'm not opposing the legislation in its entirety. It's something that's supposed to be of benefit to residents, but these two clauses are not part of that. And, you know, the Minister can say, oh, well, sure, look, you're not prejudging the outcome, and maybe there will be something, and that's fine. There is no maybe. Everybody knows, it's not a secret, we all know this is the first step. This is why we're told there needs to be an urgency, because the DAA need this to access this, because they've said they need it to change. Now, all the other good stuff that this legislation will bring in, I'm all on for that. That's why I won't be opposing the legislation. I'm working here to try and make it better in everybody's interest. But these two, you know, you say we can't prejudge. So, well, what you have, you hold. Do you know what I mean? The restrictions that were there took place after a long process, a hugely costly process for the residents involved, someone who participated in the oral hearings, who participated in High Court actions and so on, at the cost of tens of thousands of euros to themselves. And they secured out of that process restrictions that improved their well-being by putting in these night restrictions. And they're damned, to be honest, if they're going to lose them. And they certainly don't want to be going back into the courts, that if we give the facility for this to be all reopened all over again, they're going to have to go through that all over again when they have it already. But why would they do that, like, you know? And I'm again saying it's not obligated by part of the directive or anything like that, not directive, the regulation. We're doing the regulation. This is an add-on. And we can pass the regulation and all the other good stuff without these two bits. And I'll be pushing it.
Want to say something there?
Yeah, in relation to this, I mean, the Minister told